Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Lotsa Helping Hands July webinar. We are delighted that you all are participating with us this afternoon. This actually marks the beginning of our learning series that we are implementing here at Lotsa Helping Hands. Beginning in the month of July, we are actually offering two types of webinars every month. One entitled Lotsa Learning Circles, which is an opportunity for us to provide information and content about using Lotsa Helping Hands to our members and those of you who are interested in becoming members. And then the second in the series each month is our inspiration webinar series, and that is focused on caregiving topics that you all share with us that are of interest to you. So again, I just wanted to welcome you to today's session to talk about open community websites, which is a new model that we've recently introduced through Lotsa Helping Hands, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you today. One point about the Lotsa Learning Circles that we're hosting each month is that they are a more informal gathering of folks and certainly allow for a lot of Q&A. So you will see on your navigation in the GoToWebinar panel, you should see a place where you can post a question. So I encourage you to jot your questions down or type them in as I talk, and we will be allotting time at the end to do some Q&A because we really do want to hear from you and want your feedback and questions to influence not only the content that we share in our webinars, but also on our website and through our newsletter. By way of introduction, my name is Brooks Kenny, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and on the founding team here at Lotsa Helping Hands. And again, I'm just delighted to be able to share with you today our open community model. For those of you who are not familiar with Lotsa Helping Hands or are just here to learn a bit more, I wanted to start with probably the most important message, which is our vision. We here at Lotsa, from the earliest days of inception through now, have always had a vision of a world where everyone can give and receive help through the power of community. And those words we do not take lightly. We truly believe that community can do so much to support not only caregivers who are caring for loved ones in medical crisis, but really anyone who has a life challenge and needs the help from their community. We really believe so much in the power of that, and it's something that we provide through our private as well as our open community model. So we thank you for participating today and look forward to sharing more of our vision as we walk through the slides. Our agenda is based on 4 key points. First, we want to walk you through just briefly the private and open community models at Lotsa Helping Hands. We recognize that many of you may be familiar with Lotsa through our private community websites, and we want to just make sure we explain those and help you understand the way they are different from the open community model. But the bulk of our time will be spent talking about open community websites. We have 2 examples to share from our story project that we feature every month in our newsletter and on our website, and we want to share some open community examples with you. And then we have 10 tips for creating an open community. We recognize that many of you on the line today may not have started a community in your local town or neighborhood to organize help for multiple families. And so we wanted to make sure that we walk you through some ways to think about getting started and how you can implement this in your own town or neighborhood. And then, as I said, we'll follow up with questions and answers. So to begin, we did want to launch a poll, which you'll be seeing on your screen in one moment. And the reason why we wanted to launch this is we wanted to understand a bit more from our audience about whether or not you're interested in creating an open community. And many of you might not be sure because you're just here to learn a bit more. And so we certainly understand that, but we wanted to at least get a sense of the audience that is on the line today to figure out what might be of greatest use to you. And it looks like the majority of you about a half actually are saying that you're not sure, and the remaining half are saying yes. So that's a really good result, and we look forward to educating both groups, and I hope that if we are not able to answer all your questions today, that we certainly can follow up with you to help you get started with the open community model in your local town or neighborhood. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and just want to confirm that you all can see my slides again, and I'm going to move on to the next slide to just briefly explain the private community websites that exist at Lotsa Helping Hands. So as you can see, private community websites really were created in order to support the caregiver and family who were primarily coping with a medical crisis, caregiver exhaustion, caring for an elderly parent. Typically, what happens in that situation is the caregiver is overwhelmed by wonderful offers of help from family, friends, neighbors, people from their religious community, colleagues at work, all those very well-meaning folks who want to come around and they want to offer help. They want to deliver a meal. They want to provide a ride to a medical appointment or provide an extra helping hand as it relates to childcare or other things related to the home. And oftentimes that caregiver and family, let's say they're dealing with a cancer diagnosis, they're very overwhelmed by the offers of help and they need a way to organize it. They need a way to keep all their circles of community informed about what's happening with their loved one. Private communities have been a great way to support that need. And in fact, we've had more than 1 million people participate in private communities at Lotsa Helping Hands. So let's break it down. Essentially, the basic definition between the two, private and open, in a private community, typically, now there are no hard and fast rules, I should also say. There's definitely different ways to use the functionality within Lotsa Helping Hands. But by and large, in a private community, most everybody knows the person who's being helped. And you can see here by the picture the person in need, maybe Uncle Joe and a neighbor and a colleague and best friend and cousins. They're all coming together to help that person and family who is dealing with a medical crisis or some other life event. And the community is set up generally to help just that one person. So it might be Helping Hands for Mary or Todd's Helping Hands. And this community is created. All the information is kept private and secure, and it's not searchable in any way. So if you were to go to Lotsa Helping Hands, you actually would have to email our support desk in order to get more information about the private community and try to request to join that community, or you'd have to get an invitation from the person who is coordinating the private community for Mary or for Todd. So that is the private community model that has been part of that's been Lotsa Helping Hands for many, many years. But we started to recognize that people were asking us questions like, my mom lives in Denver. She doesn't have a lot of friends and family who are willing and able to help her. Is there a community there that could support her? And we started watching open communities pop up across the country. And we realized as part of our vision that it really does take a community to care for the caregiver. And might there be a way to create a model through Lotsa Helping Hands to organize help for multiple families in a local town or neighborhood? And so we actually created and very recently launched in June of this year the open community model. And so we are recognizing that this newly launched opportunity is a way for people to come together and offer help in their local town. It's a way for people to organize help for multiple families in need. So you can see, as this picture shows, it could be anyone needing help, from a family that maybe moved to town and the husband has recently had an unexpected medical crisis and the family doesn't know anyone, and so it's hard to tap into offers of help from someone's circles of community. Or maybe there's a house fire in your local neighborhood and everybody is rallying together and they really want to support the family, and they need to do that in an organized way. And so we have been seeing over time hundreds of communities actually using our private community model as a way to start open communities, and now we've created the technology to make it that much easier. So anyone can be approved by the coordinator of these open communities in order to provide or receive help. And the community is often set up to help multiple families or individuals in a specific area. So imagine, if you will, Helping Hands of Springfield coming together, and there can be multiple groups within that community who are being helped at different times throughout the year. People can also search for this community to offer help or request it. And they can do that using the Lotsa Helping Hands search tool, which I'm going to walk you through in a moment. And what's great about these open communities is that not only does it work from an individual perspective if you have willing and able volunteers in your community, but it also is a great way to tap into existing local organizations, community groups, schools and university, other religious organizations that may want to organize help for multiple people and allow their community to be searchable, so others in their neighborhood can raise their hand and say, I would really like to help the Smith family, or I'd really like to help in my town for whatever need might be out there, or something that comes up unexpectedly. So that is the primary difference. Those are the primary differences between the private and open community models. So let me give you some examples of community support. And I want to just say, again, if it wasn't clear, we've actually been really overwhelmed and excited by the uptake of open communities across the country. We have hundreds that have been created, and our new model that is more formally been introduced, we're seeing an even bigger increase, because we know that there are volunteers across the country who email us and say, I was in a private community helping my aunt who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'd really like to help other women in my local town who might be experiencing a medical crisis. And so we are seeing these communities really popping up all over, and it's just it's an amazing thing to see across the country, and we're looking forward to that, as we continue to get the word out, seeing more and more communities be created and have the opportunity to share more stories of support. But this is an example of a community that we highlighted in our newsletter, and it's also featured on our website, so I encourage you to read more. But it's called the Wayland Neighbor Brigade, and this is an organization in Massachusetts that coordinates help for multiple families in the Massachusetts area in different chapters. And so at any given time, they could have many different families that are being supported, and they are helping all different types of needs related to medical crisis. Women of Wilmington is another example. This organization is a group that is made up of about 300 women, and they perform acts of kindness throughout their neighborhood, and they use Lotsa Helping Hands to organize their wonderful volunteer work. So those are just two brief examples that we wanted to share. So if you were to go to Lotsa Helping Hands, let's pretend that if you're listening today, that maybe you don't want to start a community, but you want to know if there's one in your area. Now, again, we are just formally getting started with the open community model, so you may not find one today, but if you were to go to lotsahelpinghands.com, you can click on Find a Community. And once there, you would get to this page where you can enter either the city and state or the zip code for that community, and it actually will search for you and let you know if there's a community in your area where you might be able to offer help or request help. And this is the result of the search that I just did, and this is the example that I shared for Neighbor Brigade. They have many, many communities across the Massachusetts area, a network of volunteers that are forming in order to help families that are in temporary crisis. And so this is the result that you would see, and then you can actually choose to join that community, request rather, or you can offer to help in that community. This is an example of the homepage for the Wayland Neighbor Brigade, which provides the type of help that I mentioned here. So this is just an example, and this is an example of the Women of Wilmington, this organization that has included an open community in their programming in order to organize the help for the families of Wilmington as part of their effort to perform acts of kindness. So again, those are just two stories, and you're welcome to look at our website and read more about them and how they got started. I'm sure they'll provide a lot of inspiration. So I want to walk you through a sample community that we've created here at Lotsa Helping Hands called Springfield Helping Hands. This is just an example of the homepage, and I'm actually going to switch over to the community page itself and show you a live version of it. So this is Springfield Helping Hands. So again, if you're familiar with Lotsa Helping Hands private communities, a lot of the features and layout are very similar. You can see here that they've incorporated a photo of Springfield, and they've incorporated their name, Springfield Helping Hands, and they've included a very specific description explaining that this is a group of residents that are here to help families in need of additional assistance with day-to-day life for whatever reason. So I want to emphasize that. You certainly could have an open community that is designed just to help military families in your area. If you live in a particular area of the country where there are many military families either who are deployed or who are arriving home, you could have an open community to support women who have breast cancer. Or you can have a more general purpose and focus on communities, focus your volunteer efforts on anyone who might need help. Let me show you a couple of particular things within the open community model. I'm going to click on the administration tab, which is the center of the community where you can administer everything and incorporate activities in the calendar, make updates to the community website. But there are a couple key things that I think are really important to show. Under the members column, I'm going to highlight the groups, and I'm going to go ahead and click on manage groups because I want to show you what we've done here in this example. We've actually created several different types of groups. Groups are a wonderful new feature of the service, again, available in both private and open communities, but for open communities it becomes particularly exciting because you can actually create a group that's specific to the family. So in this case, we've got the Allen Family Support, and it says that this is a designated group for activities and tasks specific to supporting the Allen family during Carl's deployment. So everything related to this group can be incorporated in the community. So you can have specific tasks like maybe preparing care packages for the family, or help with childcare, or meals on Sunday evenings for family dinner. That type of thing. So this group is specific to the one family in this Springfield open community. And we've also got the Johnson Family Support Group, which is designated to support the Johnson family after Mary's diagnosis with cancer. So this is another way that you can have a specific group of people who are designated just to support the Johnson family. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that now, and you can see these are all of the people who are part of the Springfield Helping Hands community, and we've identified those individuals who are specifically geared for helping the Johnson family support. And you can add other people. It doesn't have to be limited to the ones that we've just indicated, and then all I need to do is save changes. So now additional folks are selected to support the Johnson family. Again, it's a great way to have multiple families getting help throughout your Springfield Helping Hands. But another feature of the groups that's important to mention are the groups that can be created according to activities. So this is an example of the child care group. These are people who've been approved to support any child care needs that might occur within the community that's designated here. So it's a great way to organize your volunteers as well. Not everybody is necessarily going to be chosen to provide rides, for example. We have many different examples of communities where there may be a mix of younger persons who are interested in helping, but maybe the family is only interested in having a very small number of folks driving mom or dad to a medical appointment. And so you can actually choose which people sign in to see the transportation task and activity. So if I was Tiffany Allen and I signed in to Helping Hands of Springfield, I actually wouldn't even see the tasks related to transportation because I'm not designated to be in that group. So I wanted to share that particular feature of the open community model because it's a very valuable one when you're helping multiple people. We've got examples of communities, in particular some that are helping military families, where there are 1,000 people in a particular community that might be supporting military families. And so you obviously need to manage those. Not every volunteer necessarily could have access to multiple volunteer tasks because it would just be very difficult to make sure that everybody had something to do, number one, and make sure that the family is comfortable. So this is a larger view of the activities that are indicated for August, and I just wanted you to see the calendar because you can tell that this is related to meals, this is related to the specific family that we discussed. This is just a particular ride to an appointment. I have views of all of these because I'm in one of the coordinators in the community, but you can see that you can have multiple tasks listed within the calendar, helping multiple families, a lot of different types of tasks. There's also places where you can put events, and actually, excuse me, we're calling them occasions now, where there's not necessarily volunteer needs, but where you want the community to know what's going on. So here's an event for the Springfield community called Old Home Days, and this is where people are coming together in local parades and whatnot, and this is listed in the calendar. So it really can start to serve as a way to educate the broader neighborhood and community about things happening in the local town. So it's a great way to keep everybody updated about things that are relevant in the community. So I'm just going to go back to the home page now. And again, for those of you who are part of a private community already, I just wanted to highlight that a lot of the things that you are accustomed to seeing are still here in the open community. So you have the ability to post announcements. In this case, there's a town common yard sale taking place. You can post messages on the message board in order to update people on what's happening with a particular family or with your organization of volunteers. You can also post photos that are relevant to your local community. This is an example of the oldest house in Springfield. And certainly you can post photos specific to the families being helped or other volunteer activities that are happening. But it's also a place where you can share interesting information about your local town or neighborhood. And then finally, there is the resources section where you can actually share specific links to other websites within the local town, or you can post documents or information that you think is relevant to your community. So let's say, for example, you were partnering with your local AAA or with the junior league in your local town. If you invite them to post information about your open community, in turn, you could post them easily in your resource section. So you could just click on add a resource and you could indicate the title of the link, and then you can put their website right here, and you could actually post their resource in your open community as a way to cross-promote one another's great work. So there are a lot of ways that you can customize your open community in a way that is supportive of not only the people who are in it, but also the organizations that you collaborate with to get the word out so that collectively you're able to help more towns, people, and citizens in your local area. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now and walk you through a few things related to promoting getting started with your open community. And again, we recognize that setting up an open community is a bit different mindset than a private community, which again will always be available. And you may come across people who say, you know what, I'd really like my community to be private. I would prefer not to have people, even though they may live in my town or neighborhood, I'm just not as comfortable with them bringing a meal or offering a ride, so I'd rather have a private community. And that's absolutely fine, and the private communities at Lotsa will never go away. But we recognize so many of you are interested in gathering together linking arms with friends and others in your community to have a place where your neighbors can go to get and receive help. So we want to make sure that we give you some initial tips, and we've created 10 for you to think about in getting started with creating your open community. And I really want to emphasize that this is the first learning circle that we've done on open communities. So I am counting on all of you to share with us your feedback. Let us know what else you need. These are just very top line ideas for things to be thinking about as you explore whether you want to create an open community in your local town or neighborhood, whether you want to work with friends to create one, and whether or not you want to use a private community. So I really hope that you share your feedback with us and let us know, hey, you know, Lotsa, we really need this in order to get started, and we'll work together with those who are interested to make sure that you're successful in your endeavors. But let's start with just number one, setting up your community. And getting started is really easy to do. All you need to do is go to lotsahelpinghands.com and click on the Get Started tab, which I'm going to show you. But we want to just highlight some things to be thinking about when you're trying to decide if you even want to create a community. One of the barriers that we often could anticipate is it going to be a lot of work? And we wanted just to emphasize that creating an open community in and of itself is not difficult to do. You can just go to lotsahelpinghands.com to get started. But then after that, you can work with other people, multiple people who can link arms and work on the community together. So we have a lot of examples of volunteers who they work full-time and they do a lot of other things in their life, but they also want to volunteer and they want a simple and efficient way to do that. So to set up your community, when you go to lotsahelpinghands.com, you'll click on the Get Started tab, and you'll see that you can fill out information about your community. Again, if it's an open community, you'll want to indicate a name that really resonates. You know, maybe it's Springfield Helping Hands or Kensington Neighborhood Block, or you know, whatever suits you and the people with whom you live near and around. That's a great way to think about the name. So you'll fill in a little bit of information about your community, and it's really important that you click on Open when you're asked what type of community that you would like to be creating, because by doing that, you'll allow for your community to be searchable via the Lotsa Helping Hands location-based search, which I shared earlier. Now, you can always decide to turn that off if you choose to. We have examples of that through a few recent religious organizations that wanted to help multiple families, but they didn't necessarily want the community to be searchable via Lotsa Helping Hands. So you can still, as a reminder, create a private community and help multiple families, but you can limit whether or not people are able to search for you. The second thing you'll want to do, it's really important to update your community description. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure that in the About section of your community that you update the description you wish for others to see, because this is what they will see not only on the homepage once they are accepted into the community, but it's also what they will see when they search for your community. So if they are going to lotsahelpinghands.com and they click on Find a Community and enter your zip code where your open community exists, the description that you see highlighted here is what they will see. So it's really important that you think through the type of message you want to have in this description. Consider sharing the types of activities that your community might provide help with. For example, you might just want to be neighborhood meal delivery, and you may want to only provide meals to families in need. Or maybe you want to have a more broad list of volunteer activities. These are the types of things that you would want to have in your About section so that it's very clear from the beginning the type of help that you want to provide. Number 3 is to create your community's message. And this may sound like a very obvious thing, but words are really important, especially when you are thinking about what makes you unique. How do you stand out? There are lots of different organizations, I'm sure, in your local community that provide different types of help. But what you can do with your Lotsa Helping Hands open community is you can really think about the types of support that you want to provide and how best to describe your community. So that area the community I mentioned earlier, the women of Wilmington, they are designed to perform acts of kindness. And that's one of their key messages that they use to describe themselves. So I encourage you to really think through how you want to describe yourselves and how you want to be thinking about your community, and make sure that it's included not only in the about, but in all of the messaging that you do. If you send an email to your local mayor's office, or if you were to do a town listserv update to say, Helping Hands of Springfield is now live and ready to help those in need, just think about what makes you unique and how you want to promote the open community in your local town so that your message is really succinct and clear. Number 4 is to find other leaders. In Lotsa Helping Hands communities, and this actually goes for both private and open communities, there's several different types of people or roles that people play. There are leaders who essentially are the first people that create that community, and then there are also coordinators. Leaders have access to the entire site, so they can use that administration tab that I showed you. They can build groups within the community. They can update the calendar. They can add activities and tasks. They can post resources, messages, photos, etc. Coordinators can do just about everything that leaders can do, but there are a few aspects of the community website that are limited to leaders. But you don't have to go it alone. If you have it inside you and you're thinking to yourself as you think through this model, wow, imagine what my town would look like. Imagine the culture of my neighborhood if we had this open community. You know, enough of the email tag and the phone tag and the texting when someone is going through a medical crisis, or when somebody has a very unexpected life challenge like an automobile accident or a house fire. Enough of that challenge of organizing. Imagine if we had an open community in my neighborhood. We encourage you to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to people in your religious community, and identify others who are willing to be leaders and coordinators within your Lotsa community. Someone could handle just the recipient needs. They could be designated to respond to those inquiries. Someone else could be the designated person to post the tasks and activities on the calendar. And yet another person could be designated to get the word out to local organizations. So I encourage you to think about, you know, we already do this. It's true in our own lives. You know, when we're in an experience, I know I personally have had many of my own, and people are hearing about somebody's crisis, we all come together and we think, what can we do? Okay, you bring the meal on Friday, and I'll make sure that Johnny gets a ride to soccer practice on Saturday morning. And so you know that naturally there are going to be people that you could call upon to link arms with you and participate in your open community in your local town or neighborhood. So we encourage you to think about those folks and not feel that you have to take it all on by yourself. Number 5 is really, really important, and we've been doing a lot of outreach ourselves here at Lotsa Helping Hands to civic leadership and governmental groups across the country at the local level to really reach out to say there are so many needs out there in the marketplace, and so we know that local organizations are a great way to spread the word to interested volunteers as well as to those who may need help. So consider groups like schools and PTAs or your local mayor's office, again, the religious organization, local assisted living facilities or youth volunteer groups. Even local retailers are an opportunity for you. And I know you might be scratching your head and saying, what are you talking about? But you could easily share with your local retailers and vendors to say, you know, would you post this flyer on your bulletin board? Or would you share this on your listserv so that residents of our town and community who might need help or who want to raise their hand and offer help know that there's an open community where they can sign up, so that you have veritable herd of folks who are at the ready when somebody is in need. And we really encourage you to look at your existing community and figure out the types of local organizations that you may reach out to with your key messages about your open community. I will say this is an area where we will be providing additional support to open communities. So if you do create one, we have a toolkit that we're providing that has some examples of email messages that you can be providing and listserv emails that you can send out in your local town to really tap into those local groups. And remember, you could offer them something in return. As I shared with you in the demonstration community, on the resources section, you could offer to list those local organizations to say, hey, if you wouldn't mind posting this flyer on your location or storefront, or putting a note on and a link on your website, in turn, we'd like to highlight your organization on our resources page in our local open community website. So think about what you can give and what you would like to receive from these local organizations. It's a great way to very quickly spread the word. Well, you can't really do anything without hosting a party. At least that's one point of view. And we think it is a great idea to invite people to gather. Maybe it's at your local town hall, or it's at somebody's home, and invite people to come together and talk about your open community. Talk about the purpose of your community, what you want to achieve, the challenges that you know some of your residents might be facing, and how you want to overcome them. Think through how you want to manage the different leaders and coordinators in the community so that different folks raise their hand and say, I'd love to be in charge of handling the transportation needs for all the families that we're helping, or someone else to designate to organize the meals and posting those activities within the help calendar. We all probably have experienced local parties, to gather and talk about different things in our lives, whether it's, Tupperware parties or jewelry parties or local politics. But what an amazing opportunity to bring together your local towns and neighborhood folks and neighbors to be able to say, let's get together and talk about how we're going to help one another. Let's come together and figure out a way that we can provide support to the people in our town who desperately need it, either on an ongoing basis or when a crisis hits. So I don't mean to sound trite when I talk about a party, but it is a great way to bring people together and share ideas, and you'd be amazed at what could happen when everybody puts an idea into the hat and starts thinking through how to get the word out so that more people in your community can be helped when they need it. Next is to keep in touch with volunteers. There's an announcement section, as you know, that I showed you to keep volunteers up to date in what's going on in your community, and you can easily let them know, and there's system-generated reminders that can go out when volunteer tasks are posted on the calendar. But we really encourage you to keep in touch with volunteers and continue to invite them to raise their hand to promote the great work that you're doing, and invite them to not only offer what their area of expertise is. Maybe you've got a group of folks in your community that are already part of a dinner club, and maybe that dinner club could raise their hand, and instead of all gathering to feed themselves one month, maybe one month they could make a number of meals that could be frozen and kept for families in need. There are lots of different ways that you can tap into and keep in touch with your volunteers for ideas. So we just encourage you to keep the lines of communication open so that folks can continue to stay involved. Of course, it's really important to promote your open community, and I've already touched on a lot of different ways to do that, but obviously the more you talk about it, the more people will access it. The more inclined volunteers might be to raise their hand and offer to help. The more willing somebody might be to raise their hand and say, you know what, I need help. I'm living alone, and getting my yard work done every day or every week is really starting to take its toll on me. I need to raise my hand and tap into Springfield Helping Hands so that those volunteers can come by and help me with keeping my yard beautiful. There are a lot of different ways that you can promote your community, and again, this will all be featured in your toolkit. But consider your community listserv, your your government officials at the local level, your school PTAs, other women's groups that you may want to be tapping into, your religious organizations, to make sure that you just continue to promote it, which is why the message is so important. Really knowing the name of your community and the one sentence that describes exactly what you're going to be doing is very, very important. So no matter where you are, you can easily say, join Helping Hands of Springfield. We are here to help any family in our town who's dealing with a medical crisis, and then provide the website address for them to participate. Number 9 is a really important tip, and it's something that is an area that we continue to look to all of you to guide us. And we've been doing a number of focus groups across the country in trying to help understand the best ways to encourage others to ask for help. As many of you probably know, at some point in our lives, most of us become a caregiver. Most of us will care for an aging parent, maybe a sick child or a friend. And caregivers, continue to give their time and their care. Some might just have, help for a few days, but many will help for months and even years. And it's really difficult when you are in that caregiving role and you are juggling not only those responsibilities, but you're also juggling your work and your household duties and perhaps caring for other family members in your home. It's really hard to stop and ask for help. And so one of the things that we've learned in our focus groups is to talk about it. I mean, as simple as it sounds, we hear this from many of our open communities that have been very successful over these last many months, that just having a mechanism for talking about, it's not a bad word to ask for help. It's not bad to raise your hand and say, you know what, I could use a meal every Friday. It would really take the load off. And so we encourage you to think about ways that you can encourage others to ask for help, because it's not always easy. You could talk to local support groups or even local hospitals in your area for ideas around this, or just in your conversations as you are sharing with others, friends and neighbors, to say, you know what, everybody needs a helping hand now and again, and let's create a culture in our community where asking for help is not a bad thing. Nobody has to be a hero, if you will. Nobody has to do everything on their own, but through community, we can really help one another. And so I just want to share that we really believe this is a key to the success of the open community. And again, we'll be sharing a lot more of our findings from our focus groups in our toolkit, and we welcome your ideas. You all that are on the call today, you're in the community and you're considering the idea of creating one. So I'm sure you have your own ideas, and we'd love to hear them. We'd love to really build out our toolkit and resources for you based on the experiences that you're having. But we believe so strongly that help is something that we all need to start asking for, because caring for someone and dealing with a medical crisis or a really unexpected life challenge can be overwhelming. And it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to receive help from the people in your community who want to provide it. And finally, we just encourage you to share. We often talk about at Lotsa Helping Hands the ripple effect. And if you can imagine, the caregiver or the family in need as a pebble, and once they've raised their hand and they pop that pebble into the pond, there's a ripple effect. And more people hear about the family in need, and more people gather to offer their help. And so we just encourage you to consider different ways that you can share and promote what you're doing, not only with your own community, but we also would love to hear from you. we'd love to tap into, especially our early communities that are getting created, to understand what's happening at the local level, to share with us the ways that you're using the open community model so that we can continue to build the right features and enhancements, not only to the technology, but also to the toolkit, so we can help you get the word out, so we can help you shift the conversation in your local town, where people are no longer embarrassed to say, you know what, I really need some help. And where volunteers can say, wow, I know that it really feeds my soul to give back. And while I can't volunteer 20 hours a week, I can bring a meal once a month to the neighbor down the street who is aging and living alone and could really use that extra TLC through a warm meal. And that really feels good to me. So we encourage you to just keep talking about it. Ask us questions, ask one another questions, and offer ways that we can continue to promote this new way of helping, which we believe so strongly in our country is so vitally important. And so, you know, we hope to see many, many pebbles being tossed in the pond as more and more people offer and receive help through Lotsa Helping Hands. So I want to just move us on to the Q&A. I hope those 10 tips were a helpful way to get started with thinking about an open community. I want to give you a couple of question and answers that we've received from people when you've all signed in to participate in the webinar today. I want to answer those, and then while I'm doing so, I'd encourage you to go ahead and click on the question button in your dashboard here, and you can actually ask me questions, and I'm happy to take them and answer them and provide you with ideas. So the first is, can I use this for my church or religious group? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have so many examples. We have thousands of religious organizations that have been using Lotsa Helping Hands for years to help multiple families in need. You know, the idea of helping one another is not new, but in our busy lives, we need a really good way to organize it. We need a really great way for 300 people to be told very quickly, the Smith family needs help. And check out the calendar, click on the link below, and sign up. That's a very easy way for that family to get help very quickly. And so we have so many religious organizations that actually post their Lotsa Helping Hands website address in their church bulletin. And you can do it via the private community feature or the open. So just remember, if it's an open community, that means people in your community, or really anyone, can search in your zip code and they would find your religious organization. And so they could sign up or request to sign up rather, and they have to be approved, and they have to be approved by the community leader to be a volunteer. But they certainly can do that. Now, we also know that there's some organizations that want to help multiple families, but they don't necessarily want to be searchable. So you can use a lot of these same tactics and ideas that I've shared today, but you don't have to have it searchable. So you can actually, in the creation process, just go ahead and choose private, but then you can still help multiple families. The second question is, can I help multiple families without the site being searchable? So I think I've answered that one, but whoever asked that, I wanted to make sure you saw your question being highlighted. You absolutely can. You can help multiple families. If you don't want your community searchable, that's completely fine, and you would just choose the private option in the community type when you're creating your community from Get Started. And the third question is, does Lotsa provide the volunteers? And I want to be really clear about that. We actually do not. We do not provide the volunteers. We provide the platform and the software in order for you to organize the volunteers. Having said that, we are promoting Lotsa Helping Hands widely. And so if you are an open community and people do search in your zip code, there might be a volunteer that you don't know who says, wow, I just searched and I live nearby and I'd really like to raise my hand and become a volunteer at Springfield Helping Hands. And so while we don't directly provide the volunteers, we are providing an increased awareness and access for potential volunteers to find you. So that's just the best way to think about it. But we ourselves do not provide those volunteers. We just help you organize them so that people can get the help that they need. Wonderful. So a couple of additional questions are coming in here, and I want to provide the answers to you. First is, how do you approve people that you don't know? So this is a great question, and really appreciate the inquiry. And we didn't have time to go through it today, but there's actually a section within the communities that allow you to vet the volunteers in terms of best practices. So there's multiple forms that are incorporated when you want to add a member to the community. And actually, I'm still in my community, so I can go ahead and do this on the fly. But if you want to actually add members to your community and you do that, there's actually, there's a description of best practices, the community leader, but then there's also information about best practices. And this is where you can actually learn about how to think through for the, here we go, excuse me, sorry about that. This is a step-by-step guide to building your open community. So this allows you to look at the process for recruiting and approving volunteers and the best practices that Lotsa Helping Hands provides. So this is an introduction. We suggest in our best practices that have been established with support from many different leading organizations that you need to have at least 2 people know the prospective member who is signing in to help. I'm trying to get you all a better view here. I apologize. As well as making sure that somebody is kind of championing that member. And chances are that will be the case if you are in a local town or neighborhood where, you know, people know each other. They may not all know the people being helped, but they certainly might be aware of the volunteer who's interested. There's also a very detailed screening process that we're recommending that folks do, and they are there are questions that you can review here that you can find to actually identify the types of things that you may want to ask a volunteer if nobody is aware of them, or if only, or if even if you are championing the volunteer, but you want to ask them some more detailed questions. Then on step 3, there's information about background checks. While we at Lotsa Helping Hands do not provide background checks specifically, we do provide information on what you can do in order to access that if that's of interest to you. So I encourage you to read the finer details of this section under the best practices. And again, just as a reminder, you can find that in the when you add people to your community when you click on best practices. So it's a great question. Another question, so I see someone else asking if we can speak to the process of approving members. So I'm hoping I hope that I answered that question thoroughly enough. And we actually are going to have a webinar certainly in the future that highlights things related to best practices for vetting volunteers. So we certainly can look at that for you as well and provide more details. Another question that just came in is whether or not we have examples of open communities in Canada. Really appreciate this question, and I want to be really clear. Right now, the Lotsa Helping Hands location-based search is only is not available in Canada, but it will be. And we can follow back up with you to tell you when we're thinking about that being available. But having said that, what you can do is you can create a private community and help multiple members, and you can still share that URL of the private community with folks, and they would just need to request to join that community from you. So they wouldn't be able to search for it, so you would actually have to let them know it exists and get the word out that way. And so there's less of the two-way as it is right now in Canada, but we're hoping to introduce the search capabilities there in the future. So I appreciate that. One more question I think we can when you were speaking about helping multiple families and not being searchable, was your response that you would then create a private community, not an open one? Yes, thank you so much for asking that question. Yes, when you are in need of creating a community to help multiple families and you don't want the community to be searchable, or if you can't be searchable yet, if you are in Canada, as an example, you would just choose to create a private community. And that private community can definitely do all of the things that an open community can do in terms of groups and having multiple families being helped. The only difference is that it can't be searched. Okay, I think I've gone ahead and um, answered most of those questions. One other thought I just have about the open community, because there were a couple as it relates to whether you should have it as private or open. You can also switch the community designation in the administration tab within the community. So I can actually go ahead and show you that. Again, this is we're doing a little bit free form here, so I appreciate everybody being so flexible. I'm jumping around here, but you actually in the community type, this is where you would do that. So if you saw where I went, I just clicked on the administration tab, and then when you scroll down, you can actually change the community to private, or you can have it as open. So that's the other place that you can change it. So not to worry if you've already created an open community, but you'd like to switch it to private, or vice versa. That's where you would do it, through the administration tab. So I just wanted to highlight two things. First is we really would love for you to connect with us. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We're on LinkedIn, and we actually recently joined Pinterest as well. For those of you out there that are active on that social media site, it's been a great opportunity for us to share with our members and post so much inspiration from all of you. So I encourage you to check us out there. And also for you to email us at support@lotsahelpinghands.com. Anything that you are thinking about from today, whether it's, something that you might need in order to be more successful in creating and managing and promoting your open community, we want to hear from you. We really, really want to get your feedback on an ongoing basis. So I hope that you connect with us in all these different ways so that we can stay in touch with you and learn about what you're doing and offer you additional support so that you can do it successfully in your community. We also wanted to highlight in August, on August 8th, is called Help on the Home Front. And this is a campaign that we're doing, a national campaign that is featuring specifically how our nation can come together to support military families. Not only those families who are coping with a deployment, when a loved one is deployed, but also when they arrive home and they're dealing with an injury and they're wounded. We know from a lot of experience that we've had with different communities across Lotsa Helping Hands that our nation's military families need our help. And so we are seeing more and more communities, there have been 500 so far, created to support our nation's military families. And we're actually dedicating our August webinar to our military families. And so you'll be hearing stories from military families who are benefiting from a Lotsa Helping Hands community today. And you'll also learn some tips and ideas for how to specifically help a military family. So if you're thinking about creating an open community and you are aware of a military family in your local town that might need some help, or if there's a military base near you, we encourage you to think about attending this webinar to get some additional tips, or to checking back with us on our website and viewing the recording after August so that you can learn more. We're really, really excited about this focus and really touched by the response we've received from so many of our members who are eager to help our nation's military families. So mark your calendars for that and check our website to register. So that concludes our time together for this afternoon. I see that we are just on the 3 o'clock hour, 3 o'clock Eastern. So I want to, with that, I just really want to thank you so much for sharing with us today, sharing your questions, participating. And most importantly, I want to thank you for your interest in looking at the way that you can help in new ways through Lotsa Helping Hands, through the power of community, that we can all come together and help one another. It's a really special and important topic for us, and we appreciate so much your interest, and we hope to hear back from you again soon. And I hope you share with us how we can help you do the great work that you're doing in your local community. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.